The Fieros Forever Museum used to be right here, right in this area, and a lot of the Pontiac Fieros have now been moved. I know a lot of people have been asking about like what is going to happen to the Fieros, and I see a lot of them are gone. So
well, the Fieros themselves, 19 Fieros went underwater, about 12 feet. So they are all, you can see that one, that's been washed on the outside, but the inside is covered with mud. And it got in through wherever, but it covered them all. Some of them are 2-3 inches of mud on the seats.
Yes.
And the dash and everything are covered.
Oh, wow. So the rest of them, a lot of them have been moved, I see.
Well, there's still 3 or 4 behind Cole. They blew the water, picked him up and carried him into his yard, damaged his fence, so he wants reparations to get my cars out.
Wow. So he's not letting you go in and just retrieve them?
No. Well, I haven't talked to him yet, but I got to believe that he feels I'm responsible for his fence or something. I'm not sure.
Is this your house right here too?
No, that my house is on the bend of the lake there.
Up that way.
And it's about 8 feet above the water, and the bank is about 8 feet, and then it goes up about another 2 feet. So it was about 10 feet over the water, and the water never came in even into our yard, but it took our dock and deck away.
Did you end up having insurance here on the museum or up there on your house?
We didn't bother with the house. It wasn't that big a deal, but this, we checked with the insurance company, and they said, oh no, this is flood. And so we don't cover flood.
Yeah.
But the cars, we had 20 cars here. One car was taken to my house because it didn't have windows, and we didn't want it to get wet, so we put it up at my house, and we thought we were going to get a 12-inch flood like we had in the past, because last 3 years ago we had another flood. The dam was just Sanford Dam, and it got into my parking lot and got up into the cab, and so it made them flood damaged cars, and we got fully paid for those. This time we were told that this was a different policy, and they were going to pay, but they were only going to pay Blue Book. And I said, well, these are collector cars, and because I had 40 cars originally, and I had just 20 this time, and we were down to the collector cars and about 4 parts cars in the back, and the parts cars were all buried.
Over there.
3 were buried. Well, 1 was upside on the trees. We had a Lamborghini Countach that was parked in the garage. It was upside down on that tree, and then the white Pontiac Fiero was against that tree. Across the way there was a red one that was buried. It still has all the gravel in it. It's so heavy that it popped the tires going, dragging it. Then there's another one. That's my Aurora right there. He hasn't been able to get it out. They had a slab over it.
Wow. So what made you interested in starting to collect the Fieros in the first place?
Oh, I just liked them. I'm an architect, and I ended up driving one. It was an 84, and I bought it in 87. And then after that, I drove one at a time for about 2.5-3 years, and bought the next up. And finally, after about 3, I got into a GT, which was the fastback. And I really like the fastback the most. The car is a really unusual car because it has a steel chassis and a plastic body. And when they go through the plant, they break the car down into 5 sub-assemblies so that they average out. They don't, because they'd had a lot of trouble with GM with metal warping when it was welded, and so they broke them down and it averaged out, and then they put it in a what they call a mill and drill machine, which had never been used before. What they did is they put all those 5 sub-assemblies together in this one mill and drill machine, and it held everything in perfect relationship to everything else, even though there might be a little warping. And so then it would hold them in that, and then drill it, and then mill it. So on one car, the hole in the fender might be here. On another car, it might be over here. But it was perfect in the car, and they won fit and finish for the first year from GM. That was one of the things. The mill and drill machine is actually in the Smithsonian, or a trial copy of it. One mill and drill machine built all 300 and I forget what the final thing was. I had all the numbers.
Yeah.
We had it by model and by color, and it was kind of interesting. And we had rare Fieros. That blue one, they only made 4,400 out of 370,000 or so. The one down the road is a T-top, and that was about 0.5% of the cars.
Wow.
And in fact, that was the first one in 1988. They'd had them out since 1986, but they were always an aftermarket situation. They all, or 90% of them, had a big sky window, and that was always nice. But the T-tops were even nicer, you know.
Yeah.
And so I tried to get a T-top in '86, and I do have one now. That's the only one that made it out alive.
Wow.
It got taken to my house because we had it parked by the back door the first time this flooded 3 years ago, and the water actually came in on my office floor, about 3/4 of an inch, and just as it started to get into my garage, the dam reversed and started holding water, and it never went into my garage. This time, when they called me and told me that my building was flooding, I'd already had 3 inches all over.
Yeah. So were you actually here when it started to flood, or were you?
No, I had given the state back my license December 31st. I had decided I was getting too old and I'd had a stroke and so on. So we were going to auction everything off, and the pandemic made us move our date from April 28th to July 31st or 21st. And so this got in the way.
Yeah. So I'm guessing since you were auctioning stuff off, you're not going to have plans to rebuild it now?
No, we took 3 cars, and we've taken some of the things that we liked about the thing. We had a 15-foot full-size section drawing of a special car. It was a IMSA racer that was a Fiero, and we had a Lamborghini Diablo kit car that was a Fiero. The Fiero, see, you can take the body panels off and put other body panels on and make it look like anything you want. And you can put Fiero, when it came out in 73, it was a 73 was a 74. You could only buy it with a 4-cylinder engine. But then when they did so well selling it, then GM let them put a 6-cylinder in, a 2.8. The reason they had to, GM had to dole it out was because of Corvette. Corvette tried to kill him every chance they got.
Yeah.
Because it was a poor man's Corvette.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a two-seater, it was a synthetic body, it was mid-engine, and Corvette was still rear-engine. Now, this year, Corvette is mid-engine.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah. Then they actually got into the plant, the Corvette did, and had spies going through the plant, and would keep telling GM management, these guys are terrible. You gotta get rid of them.
Yeah.
Well, then they came out with a pace car engine, the pace car engine. They got to be the pace car first of all in '84, the first year, and that was the first time they'd had a mid-engine car since the Stutz Bearcat. It was very fast, but it was limited by GM management because of Corvette.
Yeah.
Well, then they Fiero on its own, which is Pontiac, researched and got Cosworth to build a 4-cylinder, 400-horse engine. And I've got the engines.
Wow.
It was in the center of my garage
Building.
just about where that beer line thing is.
Mm-hmm.
And it went out the back and ended up out where that tire machine is. And it was in a box, a big box, but it had the cover off so that we could see it. And it was completely stripped by the time it came out here. I mean, there was no box around it or anything. And there's the spare part box, that
right
one
there.
right there.
Yep.
And it was chock full of spare parts. I've only got about a quarter of the spare parts now. I don't know where they went.
A lot of people are asking, like, how do they help out volunteer-wise? Do you have any other suggestions of where to point them? I know there's a Sanford Strong webpage that they can go to, but
see, we had for some reason that building. First of all, our building got hit by the town hall. The town hall was, see that far oak tree?
yeah,
Not the one that's right here, but the one that way past it.
way down there, yep.
Yeah, that was where the town hall was.
And now there's just a foundation there, right?
Yeah, and it came, it floated out, and it wiped out 1, 2, 3, 4 buildings, and took the brick off the back. That building right there was a building I did. Excuse me. Way back about 15 years ago. And it took the brick off that, but it's still there. But all the other buildings are gone, and they just disappeared. The only one that even stayed around was the one just north of it, and it was knocked off its foundation and was on the ground. But when it got done knocking all the buildings around, it came across the road and smashed into the side of my building, and so it looked like my building was flat roofed. It looked like the building had a pitched roof.
Wow. Just crumpled it.
It went way over. In fact, that's why the dirt isn't completely excavated, because the current hollowed out the ground.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently that building must have failed early, and it kept the dirt level underneath it. But it took out the garage doors and let the water in faster.
Mm-hmm.
And so the office that it hit was 12 by 17, and that was my museum. And that had 6 glass cases on the wall. One of the cases is in that pond. We just found it. It's got glass in it, and it looks like metal, but it's wood. And they were nice cases, and the walls were lined with glass cases with really unusual. And some of them were very ordinary. I mean, they were. We had the history of the car. We had 150 models, little ones to big ones, and we had the unusual cars because the Fiero is very unusual, and it had the motors. Entech was a racing company that was built on the Fiero chassis, and it didn't even look like a Fiero. It was a race car, and but it held its own. It beat Ferrari and all the other cars. Fiero was quite a even with the they beefed the horsepower up a little bit because the Fiero, the 4-cylinder Fiero, was only 92 horse, but some of those cars were about 150 horse, and you could buy the pace car had a 237 horse engine, and you could buy that for $10,000 and put it in yourself. You couldn't get it off the line because Fiero wasn't allowed to do that, but they could sell you the engine and you could put it in yourself. Yeah. And that was pretty popular. And then people were putting 350s and all kinds of wild engines in. And I had the books on them in there, so you could see what people had done. And I had books on magazines on the panel system. The panel system had never been done before, other than just the bumpers on the Trans Am. And whatever you see that's blue or gray is plastic. It's not metal. But underneath there's some metal over there. Those are the bumpers. All of these things around here are a form of plastic, and that lightened the car. Plus, it gave you all kinds of possibilities for changing it. Yeah. And people did. They really changed it. And in 5 years, it had grown a whole secondary market of aftermarket people.
Great story by Tim Evans there. You can see this is the car that he was talking about over here. And this whole corner of this building foundation is completely gone. Looks like they're redoing it right now. And here's another one of those Fieros that he was talking about up here by the Sanford sign. Thank you to everybody for supporting me, subscribing to my channel, liking and sharing these videos. It does help a lot. If you want to contribute to the efforts here, make sure you visit the Sanford Strong and Edenville Strong Facebook pages. I'll leave the links in the description down below. And if you want to help support my page, I'll also leave my Patreon and PayPal account down below. Thanks for watching, and make sure you catch my next video. Until then, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching, and make sure you hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video. Also, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next videos I will be posting, and leave your questions, comments, and suggestions below.